Now we will turn to our guest speaker, Rex. Again, I just want to thank you so much for everything that you do and for being a part of us and being willing to come and join us.
Susan, thank you very much. And it's great to be here with everybody. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to all of my fellow PCs in LD9. One of the smarter decisions that I have made since becoming the District 1 County Supervisor is hiring Kim Challender to work in our office. And Kim has graciously agreed to join us tonight because, as Susan said, it's been a lot going on. I wanted to first start off by talking about the roles of the Board of Supervisors, because even though this is a group of politically engaged and politically involved people, it's possible that not everybody knows what the Board of Supervisors does. Counties within Arizona are subdivisions of state government. So the number of supervisors in any county, the salaries of the supervisors and the other county officials, and the powers of the supervisors are determined by the state. And the Board of Supervisors is essentially, if you go back to your high school or middle school government class, the Board of Supervisors is essentially both the executive and legislative branch of Pima County government. We can pass laws that affect Pima County residents, but our major function is to be the executive branch for Pima County government. We oversee the operations of all of the departments that provide all of the services and supports that county residents rely upon. We set their budgets. We even set the budgets of the departments that are headed by independently elected officials like the sheriff and the recorder. We set the tax rates for the county, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. We do hire a county administrator who is the person who is responsible for the day-to-day operations of county government, much like a school board hires a superintendent to handle the day-to-day operations of a school district. But that is the big picture role of the Board of Supervisors in any one of Arizona's 15 counties. And if you look at this second bullet, I mentioned it says campaign topics / constituent service. And probably the biggest revelation for me since taking office in January is that during the campaign, you get a lot of questions directed to you about issues. And those are the basis for the questions that you and your opponent get during campaign forums. Those are the questions that you get from the media. But when you actually take the office, what Kim and the other two folks in my office and I have found is that most of what you do is related to constituent service. We took office at the height of the pandemic. We took office in the first week of January. That was the week that had the highest number of cases during the pandemic. And so for the first several weeks and really throughout our term, how to respond to the pandemic, how to help people to get their vaccination appointments, some of the different roles of both the Board of Supervisors and the Health Department with regard to pandemic response. That was a significant part, continues to be, as many of you know, a significant part of our work. And then we've also had a big discussion over a proposal by Tucson Water to charge what they're calling differential water rates. They're actually higher water rates solely for people who live in unincorporated Pima County. A little over a third of Tucson Water's customers are outside the city limits, and they have enacted a proposal to raise rates just on people who live in unincorporated Pima County, even though they also serve people in some of the other jurisdictions such as Marana, Oro Valley, and South Tucson. There were some big areas of focus that we had going into office. And regardless of anything else that I do during my tenure as the District 1 Supervisor, I already know that the thing that I am going to be most proud of is that we worked to ensure that the county took a leadership role in decreasing barriers to access to quality early childhood education. There is just loads of research about the benefits of preschool to all learners. And the biggest barrier to enrolling in preschool for any family is cost. And that shouldn't be the case. So because of the county taking a leadership role and devoting funds towards making sure that any child who wants to go to preschool can do so, regardless of family income, there are going to be 1,200 students in Pima County next year who are going to be in preschool who wouldn't be otherwise were it not for the county's leadership in this area. Transportation. Well, as you know, or maybe as you've surmised, driving around on the roads in unincorporated Pima County, and by the way, those are the only roads that the county is responsible for. The various jurisdictions are responsible for their roads, and there are certain state highways throughout the county. For example, Oracle Road is a state highway, so that's the responsibility of the state. But 70% of the roads in unincorporated Pima County, when they were assessed back in 2019, were found to be in poor or failed condition, 70%. And a significant number of those roads are within District 1. So we have been working very hard to get those roads improved as quickly as possible. I sponsored a measure that put an additional $50 million into road repair in the next fiscal year. That's going to allow us to do an additional 130 miles of roads in the next fiscal year. I am also the county's representative to the Pima Association of Governments and the Regional Transportation Authority. The current RTA plan, which was passed by the voters in 2006 and has funded hundreds of millions of dollars of transportation measures throughout our county since 2006, is going to expire in 2026. So I'm going to be working with my colleagues from the other jurisdictions to get an RTA next plan in front of the voters so that we can have a plan in place when the current one expires in 2026. And then affordable housing has also been a big focus for us. You may have heard that both the county and the city are revitalizing their housing commissions, and they're going to be joining together on coming up with an affordable housing strategy for our region. Affordable housing has been an issue in our area well before the pandemic. There are a significant number of families in our area who are cost burdened by the cost of either their mortgage or their rent. And so we need to have more affordable housing built, but we also need to make use of existing housing stock to make sure that more people can afford to have a roof over their head. I'm also really proud that Pima County and the city of Tucson have partnered on dispensing funds that the federal government has given us for to go to landlords and tenants through the pandemic. We decided, because of our experience with the state, with CARES Act funding, that with the next two relief bills, we wanted to work separately from the state. And we have, working with the city and the Community Investment Corporation, had a model program that has been lauded by both landlord and tenants and their advocates throughout our region. These are the boundaries of District 1, although they will change at some point here in the future, because the district boundaries are looked at after every census. Because our former president and his accessory, Governor Ducey, completely botched the census, the state legislature passed a bill that will give counties until the summer of 2022 to redraw their supervisorial and precinct boundaries, because the census results are so slow in coming in. Those are the rough boundaries of District 1 right now. River Road is the southern boundary, pretty much. I-10 Western, Catalina Highway Eastern, and then either the Pinal County line or the National Park boundary is the northern boundary of the district. We have the highest number of registered voters of any of the 5 supervisorial districts. I wanted to mention where the county derives its revenue. There is, of course, the primary property tax. There are also secondary property taxes. There's one that funds our long-term debt service, but the county's long-term debt should be completely paid off by the 2027-2028 fiscal year. There's a secondary property tax that funds our regional flood control district, and another one that funds the shared library district. And I say shared because years ago, the city of Tucson and Pima County merged into one library district. But the biggest portion of the revenues that we use to pay for county operations are actually state shared revenues. Again, I mentioned that counties are subdivisions of the state, and we get a significant amount of state shared revenues. That's especially through the gas tax and the other revenues that go into the highway user revenue funds. I mentioned that my biggest aha has been how much of the job is devoted to constituent service after the campaign was really focused mostly on issues. And I would say that there's 4 departments that we call on the most to help with some of the problems, concerns, ideas, questions that come to us from District 1 constituents, and they're listed here in alphabetical order. Development Services is the department that deals with oversight of the planning and zoning codes for Pima County. They are the department that advises the Planning and Zoning Commission and the boards of adjustment in each one of the 5 supervisorial districts. If there's ever a concern or a complaint about how land is being used, either by a public entity like a business or even by a neighbor, it's Development Services that looks into that. So we get a lot of calls into our office where we ask for support from Development Services. Just as one example, I just today got an email from somebody who was concerned about how their neighbor was handling a building of a shed on the adjoining property, and so Development Services will follow up with that. Obviously, with the pandemic, the health department is a department that we've been calling frequently, especially in the beginning of our term when there was not enough vaccine to go with all of the to accommodate all of the people who wanted vaccine appointments. Now we have the opposite situation. We have plenty of vaccine, and we're trying to get the vaccine-resistant people to get their shots. The health department also has had to deal with a not always reliable partner in state government. Just as one example, there was a federal program that was run in partnership with Walgreens and CVS pharmacies that was supposed to administer vaccines in all of the senior care and assisted living facilities in our county. And unfortunately, some of those facilities didn't get signed into that program. We're not exactly sure why. We never got a good answer from the state that was responsible for administering that federal program in Arizona. But about 50 of those facilities weren't signed up, so immunizing their residents became the responsibility of our health department. They've also been a tremendous resource to the schools and to private businesses, especially when we had the countywide mask mandate in place. Natural resources, parks, and recreation. The county has a rural, urban, and suburban parks program that includes trailheads and, of course, the loop. And we get a lot of questions about that. That we refer to them. And then transportation, I already mentioned all of the road needs within Pima County and within District 1. And I would say now that the vaccine appointment issue has been resolved, most of the calls that we get are calls where we ask for service and support from the transportation department. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Kim. Okay, this is the District 1 staff. Each supervisor gets a budget, and they can use that budget in the way that they see fit. Each supervisor's salary and benefits are part of that budget. And then the majority of the budget, you'll find that each supervisor spends on personnel. And each of us has a different number of staff members. I think there's one supervisor who has 5 staff members. Most of us have 3, and that's how many I have. And I just want to tell you a little bit about them. Cammie Evans is someone who has worked in the county for a long time. She had started working in the sheriff's department under Clarence Dupnick, worked under Chris Nanos when he was the sheriff the first time, and then worked under Mark Napier after that. She also has a background in communications in the private sector. Kate Hiller has an extensive background in the nonprofit field. She has worked for entities like Child and Family Resources, Emerge Center for Domestic Abuse, El Grupo Youth Cycling, Primavera Foundation, and her connections within the community because of all that work in the nonprofit field are extensive. And then Kim Challender, who is with us this evening, worked in the county recorder's office for many years, including as the chief deputy recorder at one point. And she also has an extensive background in customer service. So I'm very blessed to have such an outstanding team working with me. And each one of them is fantastic in terms of interacting with the dozens of constituents that we hear from in any given week. And then you have our email address at the bottom, but on the next slide, we've got more ways to be in contact with us. There's our phone number. There is our email address. And then I really encourage you to take a look at our website, district1.pima.gov. We've got it broken down into some of the biggest areas of policy and concern that we've been dealing with since January. And we also have links to other important county websites, biographies of the 4 of us. I think it's just really a very useful tool. And you can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. So that's it, Susan. And I have seen some questions pop up in the chat, and I am happy to field them in any way that you want.
Oh, thank you so much, Rex. Janice is going to manage the questions in chat, so I'm going to turn it over to Janice.
Thank you, Rex. The first question, as you can see, comes from Eloise Gore, who says, did the mayor and council respond to the Board of Supervisors letter regarding the differential rate on increase on water for unincorporated Pima?
They have not at this point, and we at our last meeting, which was on August 16th, unanimously passed a number of recommendations that we asked them to consider. One of them is that we respectfully ask that they rescind their decision to impose higher rates on people who live only in the unincorporated areas of Pima County, even though there are Tucson water customers outside the city who live in other jurisdictions. We also asked them to work in partnership with us on a true cost of service study that looks at the cost of service to deliver water to any Tucson water customer, regardless of where they live. But I think probably the most important thing that we asked them is to commit to taking a look at regional water policy and how to protect groundwater resources in partnership with the county. We've had a number of people who have said, well, why don't you just respond in kind and charge higher sewer rates to people who live within the city of Tucson? I even had one of my colleagues on the board make that suggestion. I absolutely will never, ever proposed that because our main criticism of the city's proposal is that it has no solid cost of service basis for calling for those higher rates on people in the unincorporated county. So I'm not about to do the same thing to people who live within the city. The sewer rates that the county charges are based on cost of service, and that's what we think the city should be doing. But it's also important to point out that we need to use this as a springboard to enhance our partnership with the city on not just water-related issues, but many others. I mentioned earlier there are a lot of things that we've been doing with housing, especially getting rent funds out to people in partnership with the city. We partnered with each other extensively with regard to pandemic response, and that is something we need to look for more ways to work in partnership with the city.
And next, a question from Dr. Shapiro and Bluestein asking not support Matt Heinz's proposals, Ray COVID.
So I think that's probably in reference to Supervisor Heinz's proposal to have what he referred to as a mask mandate countywide in our K-12 schools. And, I think all of us can acknowledge that it is maddening, enraging to live in one of 9 states, only 9 states in the country, where the state government has passed laws that ban local school districts and local governments from putting mask mandates in place. And the thing that was of greatest concern to me was that in terms of enforcement, because the important thing about a mask mandate on any campus is that it can be enforced with the three groups of people that are most important on any school campus. Those would be students, staff, and visitors to the campus, including parents. And what I was concerned about in terms of enforcement was that a mask mandate imposed by the county would be a mandate in name only. And the reason I'm saying that is, and I'm saying that not just as your supervisor, I'm saying that as somebody who worked in schools for close to 30 years. And in any school, if you want your students, your staff, and visitors to campus to do something, you have to be able to enforce that. If we had had a county-wide mask mandate, and again, I think it would have been a mandate in name only, it still would have left the school districts to enforce that. And anybody who was even barely conscious of the news would have also been aware that there was a state law passed by the legislature, signed by the governor, saying that local governments can't do that. So let's say you had a teacher who said, you know what, I'm not going to wear a mask and I'm not going to enforce wearing masks in my classroom. And you want to enforce that as a school official. And that person says, well, I know that the county has this so-called mandate in place, but there's also a state law, and I'm going to choose to follow the state law. So if you look in the chat, what we did instead was we enacted a policy, and I have a link to a document in the chat that describes that policy that will provide backup and support to any school district that enacts their own mask mandate. And as of tonight's meeting, all of the major school districts in Pima County have done that, with the exception of Savarita, Tanque Verde, and Vail. All of the other ones have enacted a mask mandate. And the reason that is more effective than the county doing it is because once a school district governing board puts something like that into effect, it becomes a matter of board policy. And I can tell you, because I signed school district contracts for 30 years, You are obliged as a school district employee to follow rules that are based on board policy. You are obliged as a student to follow rules that are based on board policy. When you come on any district property, you are obliged to follow rules that are based on board policy. There's a reason why in the 9 states around the country that where governors and legislators have enacted these wrong-headed laws, that it's been school districts that have taken the lead in defying those laws. They have more teeth when they do that than governments do, than local governments do. Moreover, the position of the Arizona School Boards Association, and every member of a governing board in Pima County is a member of the Arizona School Boards Association. They're the lobbying arm for school districts at the legislature. They would like this to be a matter of local control. That was one of the reasons they were so opposed to the law that was passed by the legislature and signed by Ducey. So I have the same interest in making sure that schools can follow the CDC guidelines to protect students, especially students under 12 who still can't get vaccinated, as any of my other colleagues. But where I was concerned was enforcement. And I think that what we've done, moving forward is helping with enforcement much more than a countywide K-12 mandate that would have been a mandate in name only.
Thank you, Supervisor Scott. Thanks, Kim Challender.
Janice, thank you. And if there were any questions that we didn't get to, I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Please call us if we can ever be of service to you. And thank you, Susan and Janice, for this opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rex. We could listen to you all night. Thank you so much for coming.